We're talking here in real time. We would expect the same from a virtual assistant or chatbot. And if you're not GPU accelerated computing platform enabled at that point of inference, at that point of real-time interaction, you're going to have a negative experience ultimately for the consumer.
So I want to really dive into AI and finance. What is that exactly? AI-enabled applications.
You could use any use case as an example. So let's use a virtual assistant, a chatbot, if you will, on a mobile application so that, you have a question, you want to go to your bank and just rather than call, you want to use the mobile app to get an answer to that question. You might use the chatbot feature available on that mobile app. If that mobile app is not, and that chatbot is not AI enabled, the experience is going to be subpar. You're not going to have the sophistication in the ability to answer any number of questions available through the app unless it's really AI enabled using deep learning and huge language models like BERT to really understand the context of the question and provide the right answer to the consumer. And if you're not AI enabled, you're also going to be delivering not just the wrong answer potentially, but you're going to do it in a timeline that seems awkward. We're talking here in real time. We would expect the same from a virtual assistant or chatbot. And if you're not GPU accelerated computing platform enabled at that point of inference, at that point of real-time interaction, you're going to have a negative experience ultimately for the consumer, and they're going to abandon the app and they're going to find somebody that is AI enabled and can answer their question and can do it in the context where they want that interaction to take place. So that's just one example of AI enabled applications where you're really using an accelerated computing platform in conjunction with the more advanced deep learning modeling techniques to deliver a superior experience.
And how does that AI enablement actually happen? Does the technology that NVIDIA create crawl through, let's say, databases on the websites within all the content in there so that the chatbot can come up with the right answer? How does the chatbot know what to answer?
It's all driven by training and model training, and that's all predicated on access to data. And so, yes, NVIDIA's accelerated computing platform helps all the way from the data extraction and preparation all the way through to the training of the model and then ultimately at the point of inference as well. So we support all three major steps in that workflow, if you will. And it's really up to the banks, the insurance carriers, the asset managers, et cetera, to bring the data to bear so that the models can take advantage of all this plethora of interactions that have happened historically to really understand the business, train the model to understand when somebody asks about, when is my payment due, they understand, what that actually means. So there's so much opportunity because there's so much data available and that data is growing exponentially. And the only way to truly handle that data is you have to use an accelerated computing platform to make the best AI-enabled application available.
Mm-hmm. And in the financial sector in particular, the type of data that is frequently at play is financial banking, connectivity, and transactional records. It could be credit histories pulled and pulled in. It could be past transactional histories, or let's say management of an account. So there's a lot of tools right now that are connecting to each other through APIs to pull this information and make it available. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is still a challenge of properly interpreting all this data and making it truly useful and actionable in a way that makes a smooth customer experience in whatever the customer wants to achieve. Am I on the right track here? And does AI solve, or is the intention for AI to kind of help address this problem?
Sure. I think what you're alluding to is, the concept of open banking and the ability through API connections to be able to share your financial data as a consumer with any entity that you trust. And as those entities begin to accumulate all this information about you, how do they actually leverage it on your behalf? And how do they interpret and understand you? And that's where AI plays a huge role. There are, as we were talking about earlier, recommendation systems, and our application framework happens to be called Merlin, to enable the ability to take in all of this data and then help the financial institution make the right recommendation. And that recommendation isn't always about driving revenue and cross-selling products. That recommendation could be, oh, we see, in the case of me having moved to a new home, you've recently relocated. Here's some information that you should be reading to understand about your homeowner's insurance and how to select the right policy. And oh, we see that, you're about to have a child. And so, where can the bank best interact and help the consumer along their life journey? And certainly that's in the context of financial services. And there's so much data out there that's available to understand who we are as consumers. The AI has the best opportunity to make sense of all that. And really, as you're making a more personalized recommendation, delivering a more personalized experience, that's where you're delivering a superior customer service interaction. And that's when you, as a bank or an insurance carrier, a brokerage, et cetera, are driving great customer lifetime value because you're retaining that customer longer, given the superior experience that they're being delivered.
So it sounds incredible. Is everybody doing this? Is anybody doing this? And why isn't everybody doing it?
I love the question, and a lot are doing it. Our financial services practice has been at NVIDIA since 2006. And so we have a long storied history working with the smallest fintech startups all the way through the biggest banks in the world. Everybody is at a different stage in kind of their AI journey, if you will, right? There are some banks that have already done the pilots and the proofs of concept, and they are in production with multiple AI enabled applications. And they're just trying to get the next one out the door. Whereas others are just seeing kind of the innovation that's happening across the competitive ecosystem and landscape, and they're trying to catch up. Mm-hmm. And no matter kind of where you are in this journey, what we're seeing is that the banks are at this point, as well as, insurance companies, et cetera, that they're trying to build a true AI enterprise strategy. And so where we find ourselves engaged most frequently today is working with the CXOs across the big banks, across the fintechs, to really help illuminate kind of where is the opportunity in terms of specific use cases that they want to AI enable, and then how do they build the infrastructure, the capability to deliver on that opportunity at scale. Because this is not going to stop in terms of the number and types of use cases that can be addressed through AI. The challenge that everybody's facing, this goes back to your question, is why isn't everybody doing it? Well, certainly setting up infrastructure can be complex when it comes to AI. It's challenging to make it both productive and scalable at the same time. And everybody has, total cost of ownership or ROI that they need to be able to achieve. And that's where we really come in as educators and enablers around AI. What is interesting about NVIDIA is that you're never going to write a check to NVIDIA, very rarely. You ultimately are going to, adopt our accelerated computing platform on the cloud with an AWS, GCP, Azure, Oracle, et cetera. Or you're going to go directly to your OEM like a HP or Dell or et cetera and acquire the servers that are necessary to build the infrastructure to enable enterprise AI. Where we come in is we're at the beginning and middle stages of that kind of exploration where you want to understand what do I need to be building in terms of AI infrastructure and what are the use cases I should be solving for and how should I think about that? So this is putting us in a great opportunity and position where we're kind of Switzerland. We just want you to have the best solution delivered to market as quickly as possible and to work with your data scientists and developers and leadership around how to build the right strategy and execute against it.